My parents were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary with a party at their country club. 200 guests, live band, open bar, the works. I wasn't invited, not because we'd had a fight, not because of distance or scheduling conflicts. I simply wasn't on the guest list. My younger sister Megan was there, of course. The golden child always gets a seat at the table. 3 hours into their celebration, Megan posted a photo to Instagram. The whole family gathered around my parents, champagne glasses raised, everyone smiling, everyone except me, because I wasn't there. But in the background of that photo, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, was something that made my blood run cold. Something that explained why I'd been excluded. Something that proved my parents hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They deliberately kept me away because they were hiding something they knew I'd never accept. What I did with that photo didn't just crash their anniversary party. It ended 40 years of lies and exposed exactly why I'd never quite fit into my own family. The email from my mother arrived on a Wednesday afternoon while I was in a client meeting. Subject line, save the date, Reynolds' 40th anniversary celebration. I almost deleted it, assuming it was a mass email to the extended family, until I noticed it was addressed only to me with a strange formality. No, hi Julia, no sweetie. Just a brief message. Your father and I are celebrating our 40th anniversary on June 15th at Lakeview Country Club. This is a formal family event. We hope you understand this celebration is for those who have been part of our journey from the beginning. I read it 3 times, trying to understand what it meant. Those who have been part of their journey from the beginning? I was their daughter. I'd been part of their journey for 35 years. What kind of coded language was this? I called my sister Megan immediately. She was 28, 7 years younger than me, and she'd always been the one our parents doted on. The favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong while I was perpetually doing something not quite right enough. Megan, did you get an email about Mom and Dad's anniversary party? I asked when she answered. Oh yeah, it's going to be amazing. Mom's been planning it for months. The country club is gorgeous. They hired a band, open bar, the whole thing. It's basically going to be like a wedding reception. Did your email say anything weird about who was invited? What do you mean, weird? Mine said something about it being for people who've been part of their journey from the beginning, like there's some qualification for attending their anniversary party. Megan laughed, that dismissive little laugh she'd perfected over the years that made me feel like I was being unreasonable for having feelings. Jules, you're reading too much into it. Mom probably just worded it weird. You know how she gets with formal events. She thinks she's writing wedding invitations from the 1800s. But am I invited? The email doesn't actually say I'm invited. It just says they hope I understand it's for family who've been there from the beginning. Of course you're invited. You're their daughter. Don't be dramatic. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think I was overreacting, reading subtext that wasn't there, but something in my gut told me that email was intentionally vague, that the wording wasn't accidental. I called my mother that evening. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice slightly breathless like I'd interrupted something important. Julia, hi, what's up? I got your email about the anniversary party. I wanted to confirm I'm on the guest list. A pause. A long pause that confirmed everything my instincts had been telling me. Julia, your father and I have been discussing this. The anniversary party is going to be quite large, and we're trying to keep it to immediate family and close friends. I'm immediate family, Mom. I'm your daughter. Of course you are, sweetheart. But this is a very special occasion, and we want to keep the focus on celebrating our marriage. We think it's best if this particular event is just for those who have been most involved in our lives over these 40 years. The careful language, the diplomatic phrasing, she was uninviting me from my own parents' anniversary party. Are you seriously telling me I'm not invited to your anniversary? We're not uninviting you, Julia. We're just being selective about who attends. Megan will be there, of course, and your Aunt Carol, Uncle Bob, the cousins. We've invited about 200 people who've been significant parts of our journey. 200 people are invited, but not me, your oldest daughter. Julia, please don't make this difficult. Your father and I have made our decision. This is our celebration, and we're allowed to decide who attends." I hung up before she could hear me cry. 35 years old, successful architect, with my own firm in Chicago, and I was sitting in my apartment crying because my parents had deliberately excluded me from their anniversary party while inviting 200 other people, including distant relatives I saw maybe once every 5 years. What I didn't understand yet was that my exclusion from that party wasn't about me being difficult or dramatic or whatever excuse they'd tell themselves. It was about protecting a secret they'd kept for 35 years, and that secret was about to be exposed in a way they'd never anticipated. I called my therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, whom I'd been seeing on and off for years, to process the complicated dynamics of being the scapegoat in a family that treated my younger sister like she could do no wrong. "They uninvited you from their anniversary party?" Sarah asked, her professional tone not quite hiding her surprise. "Not uninvited exactly. They never actually invited me. The email was deliberately vague, and when I called to confirm, my mother said it was for immediate family and close friends only. I'm immediate family, their oldest daughter, but somehow I don't make the cut while 200 other people do." "How does that make you feel?" "Like I've spent 35 years being tolerated rather than loved. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with me that I've never been able to fix. Like I'm the problem, and always have been." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Julia, you've been coming to me for 3 years. In all that time, we've discussed how your parents have consistently favored your sister, how you've been blamed for family conflicts that weren't your fault, how your achievements have been minimized while Megan's have been celebrated. This exclusion from their party is just another example of that pattern. But I want you to consider something. What if this isn't about you being wrong or difficult? What if there's something else going on that has nothing to do with your behavior?" "Like what?" "I don't know. But functional families don't exclude their oldest child from a celebration while inviting 200 other people. That's not normal favoritism. That's deliberate exclusion for a reason, and that reason might not be what they've told you." I thought about that conversation for days. Sarah was right that the exclusion felt different from the usual favoritism. This wasn't just Megan getting the bigger Christmas present or more attention at family dinners. This was systematic removal from a major family event. This was erasing me from the family narrative. June 15th arrived on a Saturday. I'd taken the weekend off work, not because I'd planned to attend the party I wasn't invited to, but because I couldn't focus knowing my entire family was celebrating without me. I spent the morning running along the lakefront in Chicago, trying to exhaust myself enough that I wouldn't spend all day obsessing over what was happening at Lakeview Country Club. By 3 p.m., I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through social media, unable to help myself. Megan had been posting Instagram stories all day, getting ready for the party, her makeup, her dress, a stunning navy blue cocktail dress that probably cost more than my rent. Then photos from the venue, the decorations, the band setting up, the massive flower arrangements. At 6 p.m., the party photos started. My parents looking elegant and happy, my father in a tuxedo, my mother in a champagne-colored gown. Megan with her boyfriend Trevor, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a wedding magazine. Extended family I recognized, some I didn't. Toast after toast, champagne flowing, everyone celebrating 40 years of marriage. And me, sitting alone in my Chicago apartment, excluded from all of it. At 8 p.m., Megan posted the photo that changed everything. It was a group shot, clearly taken by a professional photographer. My parents in the center, surrounded by family. Megan right beside my mother, Trevor next to her, Aunt Carol and Uncle Bob, my cousins, even my grandmother who rarely left her assisted living facility. Everyone dressed in their formal best, glasses raised, toasting my parents' 40 years together. I zoomed in on faces, cataloging who was there. distant cousins I'd met maybe 3 times, my father's college roommate, my mother's book club friends. All of them had made the cut for the 200-person guest list. All of them were more important to my parents' 40-year journey than their own daughter. Then I saw it. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, a young woman, maybe early 20s, standing near the wall talking to my Uncle Bob. She had dark hair like my mother's, my father's nose, and something about her facial structure that looked eerily familiar. She wasn't in formal wear like the other guests. She wore casual clothes, jeans, and a sweater, like she wasn't actually attending the party, but had stopped by for some other reason. And Uncle Bob, the way he was standing with her, slightly protective, like he was blocking her from the main party while having a conversation that looked serious, almost urgent. I screenshotted the photo and zoomed in further. The young woman's face became clearer. She looked like Megan. No, she looked like me. She looked like us, like a combination of both of us, with my mother's dark hair and my father's features, and something indefinably familiar that made my hands start shaking. I didn't know who she was yet, but seeing her in the background of that anniversary party I'd been deliberately excluded from made one thing absolutely clear. My parents had been hiding someone, and that someone was the reason I'd spent 35 years being treated like I didn't quite belong in my own family. I called Megan immediately. She didn't answer. I texted, "Who is the girl in the background of the group photo you just posted? Dark hair, jeans, talking to Uncle Bob?" No response. I called my mother, straight to voicemail. I called Uncle Bob. His wife answered, "Julia, so sorry you couldn't make it to the party. Your mother said you had work obligations." Work obligations. That's what they'd told everyone, that I was too busy to attend my own parents' anniversary party. "I need to speak to Bob. It's urgent." "He's still at the party, dear. Can I have him call you tomorrow?" "No, I need him to call me tonight. Tell him it's about the young woman he was talking to in the background of the family photo. Tell him I know she was there." A pause. Then quietly, "I'll have him call you." Uncle Bob called at 10:30 p.m., after the party had ended. I could hear his exhaustion, or maybe it was dread. "Julia, your aunt said you called." "Who is she, Uncle Bob?" "The girl in the background of the photo. Who is she, and why was she at my parents' anniversary party that I wasn't allowed to attend?" He was silent for so long, I thought he'd hung up. Then, "Julia, this isn't my story to tell. You need to talk to your parents." "I'm talking to you. I want to know who she is and why I've been excluded from my family for something that clearly has to do with her existence." "I can't, Julia. I promised your parents decades ago that I'd never—" He stopped himself, but he'd already said too much. "Decades ago? Uncle Bob, how old is she? Who is she?" "Talk to your parents. I'm sorry, Julia. I'm so sorry for all of it, but this has to come from them." He hung up. I sat in my dark apartment, the Instagram photo still pulled up on my phone, zooming in on the young woman's face over and over, trying to understand what I was seeing. She looked like family. She looked like she could be Megan's sister. She looked like she could be my sister. My sister. The words echoed in my head like a revelation I'd always known but never acknowledged. My parents had another daughter. They had another daughter, and they'd kept her hidden, and that's why I'd been excluded from the anniversary party, because she was there and they couldn't risk me discovering her. But why? Why would parents hide a daughter? Why would they keep her secret from me, from Megan, from apparently everyone except Uncle Bob who'd known for decades? I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours researching private investigators in Chicago, looking for someone who could find information quickly. By 6 a.m. Sunday morning, I'd hired someone. By Monday afternoon, I had a name. Claire Reynolds, age 22, born in Portland, Oregon, adopted at birth through a private adoption agency, raised by a couple named Patricia and Michael Bennett, who desperately wanted a child and couldn't conceive. And her birth certificate, the amended one created at adoption, listed her birth mother as anonymous. But the investigator had ways of finding the original birth certificate, the one filed before the adoption was finalized, the one that listed my mother's name, Linda Reynolds, and my father's name, Richard Reynolds. What I discovered wasn't just that I had a secret sister my parents had hidden for 22 years. It was that I'd been 13 years old when she was born, and somehow, impossibly, I'd never known my mother was pregnant, never knew there was a baby, never knew my parents had given away a daughter and spent the next 2 decades pretending she didn't exist. I called Dr. Sarah immediately. I need an emergency session. I found out why my parents excluded me from their anniversary party. They have another daughter, a daughter they gave up for adoption 22 years ago, a daughter they've apparently been in contact with based on the fact that she was at their anniversary party, and they've been hiding her from me and apparently from Megan, too. Julia, that's significant. Can you come in today? I met Sarah at her office at 4 p.m. I showed her the Instagram photo, showed her the investigator's report, showed her the birth certificate with my parents' names. I was 13 when she was born. 13. How did I not know my mother was pregnant? How did they hide an entire pregnancy and birth and adoption from me? Sarah studied the documents carefully. When you were 13, where were you living? We lived in Boston, same house I grew up in. And that year, did anything unusual happen? Any periods where your parents sent you away or where your mother was absent from daily life? I thought back, trying to remember being 13. That would have been, I counted backward, the summer before 8th grade. I went to sleepaway camp that summer, 8 weeks. I'd wanted to go because my best friend was going. My parents encouraged it, actually pushed me to go, even though it was expensive. And when you came back? My mother looked different, thinner, I thought. She said she'd been on a diet, and she was, distant, like she was sad about something but trying to hide it. I thought it was because she missed me being home, but now the pieces were falling into place, the memory taking on new meaning. She'd just given up a baby. She'd been pregnant my whole time at camp, given birth while I was gone, and given the baby up for adoption. And then I came home, and she had to pretend nothing had happened. Why would parents give up a baby when they already had 2 daughters and were financially stable? Sarah asked gently. That was the question. That was the question that had been eating at me since I'd seen Claire's face in that photo. Why give her away? Why keep her secret? Why exclude me from their anniversary party to prevent me from meeting her? Unless there was something about Claire's existence that they couldn't let me know. Something about her birth that was a secret, bigger than just an unexpected pregnancy. I called the investigator back. I need more information. I need to know everything about Claire Reynolds, where she lives, what she does, if she knows who her birth parents are. And I need to know if my parents have been in contact with her, and if so, for how long. The information came back within days. Claire lived in Portland still, worked as a graphic designer, had graduated from Portland State University 2 years ago. She'd known she was adopted her whole life, had done a DNA test at age 18 through one of those ancestry websites. And that's how my parents had found her. Or rather, that's how she'd found them. The DNA test had matched her to Megan, listed as a close family match. Megan had done the DNA test 3 years ago, curious about her ancestry, not knowing it would lead to her adopted-out sister finding our family. Claire had reached out to my parents 2 years ago. They'd been in contact since then. Meeting occasionally, carefully, always away from family events where I or Megan might see. Uncle Bob had known because he'd been the one to help facilitate the initial meeting, to be there as support when my parents met the daughter they'd given away 22 years earlier, and the anniversary party. Claire had been there not as a guest, but because my parents had promised her they'd introduce her to the family, that this milestone celebration would be the moment they finally acknowledged her existence. But they'd panicked. They'd realized that introducing Claire meant explaining why they'd given her up, meant answering questions they'd spent 22 years avoiding. So they'd excluded me from the party, kept Megan distracted with party planning, and had Claire come only briefly, a promise partially kept, but still hidden from most of the family. But what my parents didn't know was that by excluding me from that party, by trying to keep Claire's existence secret, they'd set in motion events that would force them to reveal not just that they'd given up a daughter, but why they'd given her up, and that reason would destroy their carefully maintained image of being a perfect family. I needed to meet Claire, not to ambush her, not to blame her for any of this, but because she was my sister and she'd been hidden from me, and I wanted to understand what had been done to both of us. I found her on social media easily. Her Instagram was public, full of photos of Portland, her art, her design work, her life. She looked happy, adjusted. Nothing in her posts suggested trauma or anger about being adopted. She looked like someone who'd been loved and raised well by the Bennetts. I sent her a direct message. "Claire, my name is Julia Reynolds. I'm Richard and Linda Reynolds' oldest daughter. I recently discovered you existed, and I'd like to talk if you're open to it. I want you to know that I didn't know about you until I saw you in a photo from my parents' anniversary party. I'd like to understand what happened, and I'd like to know you if you're willing." She responded within an hour. "Julia, I've known about you for 2 years. Your parents told me about you and Megan when we first met. They said they were planning to tell you both about me, but the timing was never right. I've been waiting to meet you. Yes, I'd like to talk." We arranged a video call for that evening. When her face appeared on my screen, the resemblance was undeniable. She had my mother's dark hair and eyes, my father's nose and chin, my own facial structure, Megan's smile. She was unmistakably a Reynolds. "You look like us," I said, the first words that came out. "I know. It was weird seeing photos of you and Megan for the first time, like looking at alternate versions of myself. Claire, I need to understand. Why did they give you up? Our parents were established, married, financially stable. Megan was 5 when you were born. They wanted more children. They'd planned for Megan. Why not keep you?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "They didn't tell you? They didn't explain?" "Explain what? I just found out you existed 5 days ago. They've told me nothing except that they excluded me from their anniversary party, and now I know it was because you were there, and they didn't want me to meet you. Julia, they gave me up because I wasn't my father's biological daughter. Your mom had an affair. I'm not Richard Reynolds' child. That's why they gave me up, and that's why they've kept me secret, because my existence would expose the affair, would destroy their perfect marriage image, would make them answer questions they've avoided for 22 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother had an affair. Claire wasn't my father's daughter. She was my half-sister, not my full sister. My mother had gotten pregnant with another man's child while married to my father, and instead of dealing with it, instead of going to therapy or separating or doing anything healthy, they'd hidden the pregnancy from their 13-year-old daughter, given the baby away, and spent 2 decades pretending it never happened. "Does Megan know?" I asked. "No, your parents haven't told her. They said they were planning to, but they keep delaying. The anniversary party was supposed to be the moment they introduced me to everyone, but they couldn't go through with it. They're terrified of the fallout, of what people will think, of having to admit your mother had an affair." "Who's your biological father?" "I don't know. Your mom won't tell me. She says it was a mistake, a brief thing that meant nothing, and she doesn't want to disrupt his life. I've thought about doing more DNA testing to find him, but I'm not sure I want to open that door." I understood that. Some doors, once opened, changed everything. But then again, everything was already changed. My entire understanding of my family had been rewritten in the past 5 days. "Claire, I need to ask you something. At the anniversary party, why were you there? If they've kept you secret all this time, why risk having you there at all?" "They promised me. When we first made contact 2 years ago, they promised that by their 40th anniversary, they'd tell the family about me. They said they'd introduce me properly, acknowledge me. I flew in from Portland for the party. But when I got there, they panicked. They asked me to stay in the background, to not interact with most of the guests. Uncle Bob was trying to explain that the timing wasn't right, that I should go home and they'd figure out another time. That's when the photo was taken. And then they saw that Megan had posted it, and they've been freaking out ever since, worried that someone would notice me and ask questions. Have they contacted you since the party? Your dad called yesterday, asked me to stay quiet, to give them more time. Said they needed to figure out how to tell you and Megan in a way that wouldn't destroy the family. Like my existence is something destructive instead of just, I don't know, a complicated truth they've been avoiding. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and unfamiliar. Rage at my parents for lying for 22 years. Rage at them for excluding me from their party to hide Claire. Rage at them for treating Claire like a shameful secret instead of a daughter. Rage at them for all of it. Claire, I have a question for you, and you can say no. But I'm going to confront our parents. I'm going to make them acknowledge you and explain everything they've been hiding, and I'd like you to be there when I do it, if you're willing. Not to ambush them, but because you deserve to be acknowledged, and they need to face both of us together. She smiled, and it was my smile, Megan's smile, a Reynolds smile that we all shared, even though Claire had been raised by other parents. I thought you'd never ask. When do we do this? What we planned over the next week wasn't just a confrontation. It was a family reckoning that would expose 40 years of lies, and by the time we were done, my parents would have to choose between continuing their deception or finally telling the truth about why they'd given away a daughter and spent 2 decades pretending she didn't exist. Parte 3, 4,500 parole. Claire and I spent the next week planning. Not planning revenge, not planning to hurt anyone, but planning how to force a truth that had been buried for 22 years to finally surface. We talked every day, video calls where we got to know each other, comparing notes on our childhoods, our parents, the family dynamics we'd experienced from very different perspectives. They were always distant with me growing up, I told her during one call. Like they loved me, but couldn't quite connect with me. I thought it was my fault, that I was too serious or too independent or too something. But now I wonder if every time they looked at me they were reminded of you, the daughter they'd given away. That's not your fault, Claire said firmly. None of this is your fault. You were a child. You deserved parents who were fully present, not parents haunted by their own choices. Did the Bennetts, your adoptive parents, did they treat you well? Her face softened. They were amazing. They are amazing. They wanted a child so badly, and when they got me, they treated me like I was the most precious thing in the world. I had a happy childhood, Julia. I don't want you to think I was damaged by being adopted. My parents, my real parents, the ones who raised me, they loved me completely. Then why did you reach out to our biological parents? Why did you want to know them? Curiosity mostly, and medical history, and I guess some part of me wanted to understand where I came from, but I never expected what I got. I thought maybe they'd given me up because they were young or unprepared. I didn't expect to discover I was the product of an affair, that I was a secret they'd been keeping for decades, that they had 2 other daughters who didn't know I existed. 3 daughters, I corrected. You're not separate from us. You're our sister, half or full, biological or not, your family, and you deserved better than being hidden. We decided to confront our parents at the next family gathering. My mother's birthday was in 3 weeks, June 30th, and my Aunt Carol was already planning a dinner at her house with the extended family. It would be the perfect opportunity, public enough that our parents couldn't just shut down the conversation, but intimate enough that we wouldn't be making a scene in front of strangers. But first, I needed to tell Megan. My sister, who'd been kept in the dark just like me, who'd been posting Instagram photos without realizing she was capturing evidence of our parents' secrets. Megan, who thought she was the golden child, but was really just another person our parents had lied to for years. I called her on a Saturday morning. Megan, We need to talk in person. Can you come to Chicago, or should I come to Boston? Jules, what's going on? You sound serious. I am serious. This is about our family, and I need to tell you something face to face. Can you fly out here this weekend? She agreed, concern clear in her voice. She arrived Friday evening, and we met at my apartment. I'd prepared for this conversation, rehearsed what I'd say, but seeing her walk through my door looking worried and confused made all my prepared words evaporate. You're scaring me, Megan said, sitting on my couch. What's this about? Do you remember when I called you about Mom and Dad's anniversary party? About the weird email I got? Yeah, and I told you that you were overreacting, which you do sometimes, Jules. No offense. I wasn't overreacting. They deliberately excluded me from that party, and I know why now. I pulled up the Instagram photo on my phone, the group shot from the anniversary party. Do you see the girl in the background? Dark hair, jeans, talking to Uncle Bob? Megan zoomed in. Yeah, who is she? Her name is Claire Reynolds. She's 22 years old. She was born when I was 13 and you were 5, and she's our sister. Megan's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, dawning realization. What are you talking about? We don't have a sister. We do. Mom and Dad gave her up for adoption right after she was born. They kept her existence secret from both of us. She found them 2 years ago through a DNA match with you. You did that ancestry test 3 years ago, remember? She matched as your close family relation. Mom and Dad have been in contact with her for 2 years, meeting her secretly, and they invited her to their anniversary party. That's why I wasn't invited. They didn't want me to meet her and discover the secret they've been keeping for 22 years. Megan was shaking her head. This is crazy. Mom was never pregnant when I was 5. I would have noticed. You would have noticed. I was at sleepaway camp the summer she was born. 8 weeks. Do you remember that summer? Do you remember anything unusual about Mom? Megan's face showed she was trying to remember, trying to piece together memories from when she was 5 years old. I don't remember much. I remember you going to camp. I remember being excited to have Mom and Dad to myself. But I can't remember if Mom was different. She gave birth while I was at camp, gave the baby up for adoption immediately, and then we all just went back to normal life, except nothing was normal because they'd hidden an entire human being from us. Why would they do that? Why give her up? This was the hard part, the part I'd been dreading. Megan, Claire isn't Dad's biological daughter. Mom had an affair. Claire is the product of that affair, and rather than deal with it, rather than face the truth, Mom and Dad gave her away and spent 22 years pretending it never happened. Megan's face went white. Mom had an affair? Our mom? Yes, and that's why they excluded me from the anniversary party. That's why they've kept Claire secret, because acknowledging her means acknowledging the affair, and they've built their whole identity on being the perfect married couple with the perfect family. The truth would destroy that image. Does Claire know about the affair? She knows she's not Dad's biological daughter, but Mom won't tell her who her father is, won't tell her anything except that it was a mistake. Megan stood up, pacing my apartment. This is insane. I can't process this. Our whole lives have been a lie? Not our whole lives, but a significant part of them. And Megan, there's more. I've been talking to Claire, getting to know her, and we're planning to confront Mom and Dad at Aunt Carol's birthday dinner for Mom in 2 weeks. We're going to make them acknowledge Claire and explain everything they've been hiding, and I need you to decide if you're going to stand with us or if you're going to protect them. What I didn't tell Megan yet was that Claire and I had also hired a genealogist to help identify Claire's biological father using DNA evidence, and what we discovered would add another layer to the confrontation that would make it impossible for our parents to deny or minimize anything. Megan sat back down, her face in her hands. I need to meet her. I need to meet Claire before we confront Mom and Dad. I can't just show up at a family dinner and ambush them without knowing my own sister first. I was hoping you'd say that. Claire is flying in tomorrow. We're having dinner at my place. You're invited. The next evening, the three Reynolds sisters met for the first time. When Megan opened my apartment door and saw Claire standing in my kitchen, she gasped, "Oh my God, you look like us. You look exactly like us." Claire smiled nervously. "I know, it's weird, right?" Megan walked over and hugged her, just hugged her without hesitation, and I watched Claire's face show surprise and then relief. "I'm sorry," Megan said. "I'm so sorry you were hidden from us. I'm so sorry we didn't know about you. You should have been part of our lives." We spent hours that evening talking, sharing stories, showing photos. Claire showed us pictures of her adoptive parents, the Bennetts, who looked kind and loving. She showed us her childhood, her life in Portland, her work as a designer. In return, Megan and I showed her our childhoods, the family dynamics she'd missed, the good and the bad, and the complicated. "You dodged a bullet, honestly," Megan said at one point. "Mom and Dad, they have this idea of what a perfect family looks like, and they've been trying to force us to fit that image our whole lives. You got to grow up with parents who just loved you without all that pressure." "But I also grew up without siblings," Claire said. "Without sisters. I always wanted siblings." "You have them now," I said. "You've always had them. We just didn't know." By the end of the evening, we'd become a unit. Three sisters who'd been kept apart by their parents' lies, now aligned to force the truth into the open. Megan was fully on board with the confrontation. More than that, she was angry. Angry in a way I'd never seen her be angry at our parents. "They've always made me the golden child," Megan said. "Always treated me like I was special and you were difficult, Jules. And I believed it. I believed I was better, more lovable, more deserving of their attention. But it was all manipulation, wasn't it? They made you the scapegoat, so you'd be the one they could exclude if they needed to. So they could keep you at a distance without anyone questioning it. They shaped our entire dynamic to protect their secret." She was right. I'd spent 35 years thinking I was the problem, that there was something wrong with me that made me less lovable than my sister. But it had never been about me. It had been about them, about their guilt and their fear and their need to hide the evidence of my mother's affair. The genealogist's report came back 3 days before my mother's birthday dinner. Claire had submitted her DNA to a genealogy service that specialized in finding biological relatives, and they'd found a match, a close match. A man named David Morrison, age 63, living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The genealogist had done additional research. David Morrison had been my father's colleague at the architecture firm where they'd both worked 35 years ago. He'd been married at the time, had 3 children of his own now, and had apparently had no idea that his affair with my mother had resulted in a pregnancy. "Should we contact him?" Claire asked when we conference called about the results. "Not yet," I said. "First we confront Mom and Dad, then we decide what to do about David Morrison. This is already going to be explosive enough without adding him to the mix immediately." "But we tell them we know who he is," Megan said. "We tell them we have the DNA results and we know exactly who Claire's father is. That will make it impossible for Mom to keep claiming it was just some anonymous mistake." The plan was set. June 30th, my mother's birthday dinner at Aunt Carol's house. Extended family would be there. Uncle Bob and his wife, Aunt Carol and Uncle Pete, my cousins, my grandmother. 20 people who'd all been invited to the anniversary party I'd been excluded from. 20 people who deserved to know the truth. Claire flew in the day before. The 3 of us spent the evening preparing, rehearsing what we'd say, deciding who would speak when. We weren't trying to humiliate our parents. We were trying to free ourselves from their secrets and free Claire from being treated like something shameful. "I'm nervous," Claire admitted. "What if they deny everything? What if they kick us out?" "Then we have DNA evidence and birth certificates," I said. "We have Uncle Bob who knows the truth. We have the photo from the anniversary party showing you were there. They can't deny reality, no matter how much they want to. June 30th arrived with perfect summer weather. Aunt Carol's house in the suburbs was decorated for my mother's birthday, balloons and streamers and a banner saying, "Happy 63rd birthday." Cars filled the driveway, my parents' Mercedes, Uncle Bob's Toyota, my cousin's various vehicles. Everyone was there except us. We'd planned to arrive late, after dinner had started, after everyone was settled and relaxed. We wanted the confrontation to happen when people were comfortable, when leaving would be awkward, when our parents would be forced to address what we were saying instead of shutting it down immediately. At 7 p.m., we pulled up to Aunt Carol's house. 3 sisters, dressed carefully, me in a navy dress, Megan in green, Claire in burgundy. We looked like we belonged together. We looked like family. What we were about to do would either free our family from decades of lies or fracture it permanently. But either way, the truth was about to be spoken out loud for the first time in 22 years. Aunt Carol answered the door, surprise evident on her face, when she saw 3 of us instead of 2. "Julia, Megan, and oh my goodness, you brought a friend?" "Not a friend," I said. "This is Claire, our sister." Aunt Carol's face went through several emotions before settling on understanding. Oh my, Linda and Richard, I didn't know they'd told you girls." "They didn't tell us," Megan said. "We found out ourselves, and we're here to make sure everyone knows the truth." We walked into the house, into the dining room where the family was gathered around the table. My mother looked up, saw me and Megan, smiled. Then she saw Claire, and the smile died. She went completely pale, her hand reaching out to grip my father's arm. My father saw us, saw Claire, and stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. "What is this? What are you doing here?" "Happy birthday, Mom," I said calmly. "We brought you a gift, the truth." The room went silent. Everyone was staring at us, looking between my parents' horrified faces and our determined ones. Uncle Bob had his head in his hands. Aunt Carol looked like she might cry. "Everyone," I continued, "I'd like you to meet Claire Reynolds, our sister, the daughter Mom and Dad gave up for adoption 22 years ago, the daughter they've been keeping secret from this family, the daughter they excluded me from their anniversary party to hide." "Julia, stop this," my mother said, her voice shaking. "This is not the time or place." "When is the time, Mom? You've had 22 years. You've had 2 years since Claire found you through a DNA match. You had their anniversary party where you promised Claire you'd introduce her to the family, but you panicked and hid her in the background instead. When exactly were you planning to tell the truth?" Megan stepped forward. "Everyone, our mom had an affair 35 years ago. She got pregnant. Instead of dealing with it honestly, instead of going to therapy or separating or doing anything healthy, she and Dad hid the pregnancy from Julia by sending her to camp, gave the baby up for adoption, and spent the next 2 decades pretending Claire didn't exist. And when Claire found them through DNA testing, they kept meeting her secretly while continuing to lie to us about her existence." My grandmother stood up, her voice sharp despite her age. "Linda, is this true? Did you give away a grandchild and never tell us?" My mother was crying now, silent tears running down her face. My father looked like he wanted to run, to escape, to be anywhere but in this room being forced to confront what they'd hidden. "It's true," my father said finally. "We gave Claire up for adoption. We thought it was the best choice at the time. We thought it would be easier for everyone." "Easier for everyone?" I asked. "Or easier for you? Easier to hide Mom's affair? Easier to pretend you had a perfect marriage? Easier to maintain your image?" "Who's the father?" my cousin David asked. "If it wasn't Uncle Richard, who's Claire's biological father?" This was the moment Claire and I had planned for. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the genealogist's report. His name is David Morrison. He worked with Dad 35 years ago. He's married with 3 children of his own, and according to DNA testing, he's Claire's biological father. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. "How did you had no right." We had every right, Claire said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was steady, stronger than I'd expected. I had every right to know who my biological father is. You don't get to keep that from me just because it's inconvenient for you. Does he know? Uncle Bob asked quietly. Does David Morrison know he has a daughter? Not yet, I said. We wanted to confront Mom and Dad first, but we'll be reaching out to him. Claire deserves to know her biological father if she wants to, just like she deserved to know her biological mother and her sisters, but you kept her from us for 22 years. Aunt Carol stood up, walked over to Claire, and hugged her. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry they did this to you. You deserved better. One by one, other family members stood. My cousins came over to meet Claire, to apologize for not knowing she existed. My grandmother held Claire's face in her hands and cried, saying she'd always wanted more grandchildren and couldn't believe one had been hidden from her. My parents sat at the table isolated, watching their family embrace the daughter they'd tried to erase. My mother was sobbing. My father looked destroyed. Why? Megan asked, her voice breaking. Why did you treat Julia like she was the problem child her whole life? Why did you make me the golden child? Why did you shape our entire family dynamic around hiding Claire's existence? My father finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because every time we looked at Julia, we were reminded of what we'd done. She was 13 when it happened, old enough to remember that summer, old enough to ask questions. We thought if we kept her at a distance, kept her from being too involved in family matters, she'd be less likely to discover the truth. And Megan, you were so young, 5 years old when Claire was born. You didn't remember anything. You were easy to love without guilt. So you sacrificed Julia, Megan said. You made her the scapegoat for your guilt. You made her feel like she wasn't good enough, like she didn't belong, all to protect your secret. We thought we were protecting the family, my mother said through her tears. We thought the truth would destroy everything. You were wrong, I said. The lies destroyed everything. The secrets destroyed everything. The truth is what might save us. What happened next wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It was messy and painful and complicated, but it was also the beginning of something honest for the first time in 22 years. The dinner dissolved after that. Some family members stayed to talk to Claire, to ask her about her life, to try to make up for 2 decades of her being hidden. Others left quickly, overwhelmed or angry, or needing time to process what they'd learned. My parents didn't leave. They sat at the table while the family they'd lied to for years learned the truth. They sat while Claire told her story about being adopted by loving parents, about finding her birth family through DNA, about being promised acceptance and being hidden instead. Uncle Bob pulled me aside before he left. Julia, I'm sorry. I've known about Claire since she was born. Your parents swore me to secrecy. I've been carrying this for 22 years, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You were protecting them, I said. I understand. But now you don't have to protect their lies anymore. 3 hours after we'd arrived, it was just the 5 of us left. Me, Megan, Claire, and our parents. We sat in Aunt Carol's living room, the remains of the birthday party around us, and had the conversation we should have had 22 years ago. I need you to understand something, Claire said to our parents. I don't hate you. I had a good childhood. The Bennetts loved me and raised me well. But you hurt me by hiding me. You hurt Julia by making her the scapegoat. You hurt Megan by lying to her. And you hurt yourselves by carrying this guilt for 2 decades instead of dealing with it honestly. What do you want from us? My father asked. Acknowledgement, I said. Public acknowledgement that Claire is your daughter, that she's our sister. No more hiding, no more secrets. If you can't do that, then we're done. The 3 of us will be sisters without you. And therapy, Megan added. Family therapy, all of us, to process this and figure out if we can rebuild something healthy from all this dysfunction. My mother looked at Claire, really looked at her for the first time since we'd walked into the house. You have my eyes, she said softly. And your father's, David's, you have his nose. I see it now. I've always seen it. That's part of why it was so hard to look at you. You're evidence of the worst mistake I ever made." "I'm not a mistake," Claire said firmly. "I'm a person you gave away and then tried to erase. But I'm here now, and I'm not going away. So you need to decide if you want to be part of my life, part of all our lives, or if your pride and your image are more important than your daughter's." It wasn't a decision they made that night. It took weeks of difficult conversations, of therapy sessions, of slowly rebuilding trust that had been shattered by decades of lies. My parents had to tell David Morrison the truth, had to face his wife and his children, and explain what had happened 35 years ago. That conversation went about as well as could be expected, which is to say, it was awful. But David wanted to meet Claire. He wanted to know his daughter, even though her existence had blown up his carefully constructed life. They started meeting for coffee, awkward at first, then gradually more comfortable. Claire gained a biological father who was willing to acknowledge her, even if it cost him his marriage. My parents went to therapy, individually and together. They went to family therapy with me and Megan and Claire, sessions where decades of dysfunction were slowly untangled. They acknowledged the damage they'd done. They apologized repeatedly for all of it. It took a year before Claire agreed to spend Christmas with them. It took 18 months before I felt comfortable being in the same room with them without feeling angry. It took 2 years before Megan forgave them for making her the unwitting beneficiary of their favoritism. But slowly, painfully, we rebuilt. Not the perfect family they'd always pretended to be, but an honest family. A family that acknowledged mistakes and worked to do better. A family where all 3 daughters were valued, where Claire was no longer a secret, where I was no longer a scapegoat, where Megan was no longer burdened with being the golden child. 3 years after that birthday dinner confrontation, the 5 of us took a family photo together. All 3 daughters with our parents, no one hidden, no one excluded. My mother posted it to social media with a caption that read, "Our 3 beautiful daughters, all of them loved, all of them valued. It took us too long to say that publicly, but we're saying it now." The comments were mixed, some supportive, some confused, some judgmental. But we didn't care. The truth was out, and we were all free. I think about that Instagram photo sometimes, the one Megan posted from the anniversary party that started everything. Claire in the background, slightly out of focus, hidden but visible. That photo was supposed to be evidence of my exclusion, proof of their secrets. Instead, it became the catalyst for truth, for confrontation, for change. My parents didn't invite me to their anniversary party because they were hiding a daughter they'd given away. But by excluding me, by trying to keep their secret, they made sure that secret would be exposed in the most public way possible. They thought they were protecting their perfect family image. Instead, they destroyed it and had to build something more honest in its place. I have 2 sisters now, Megan, who I grew up with, and Claire, who I should have grown up with. We talk almost every day, the 3 of us, a group chat where we share our lives and support each other and make up for lost time. We're closer than many siblings who grew up together, bonded by the shared experience of being lied to and choosing truth over comfort. And my parents, they're learning to be honest, learning to value all 3 of their daughters equally, learning that perfection is impossible but truth is essential. It's not a fairy tale ending, it's a real ending, messy and complicated and still healing, but it's honest, finally, for the first time in 40 years. My parents forbade me from their anniversary party. Hours later, my sister posted a photo that revealed their hidden daughter. What I did with that photo destroyed their carefully constructed lies and built something more honest in their place. And I'd do it again. If Julia's decision to expose family secrets instead of protecting them resonated with you, hit that like button. My favorite moment was when the 3 sisters walked into that birthday dinner together, united in truth. What was yours? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever been excluded from your own family or discovered secrets that explained your treatment, know that the truth will set you free, even if freedom is painful. Subscribe for more stories about people who chose honesty over comfort and truth over family image.